Today we're talking with Vanover about what it is going to be like racing in DRL. We talk about a few other things too, but specifically we really dig into what is it going to be like for Alex to go from racing in the open circuit to racing in DRL, which is a completely different type of racing. And you know what? As I'm sure you can probably understand, he is very optimistic about his chances to do very well. Watch ahead. It is truly inspirational to see one of the greats plot his course to the top. And, you know, I can tell you what, after watching Alex really get into this, I am going to watch this season's DRL with bated breath, hoping that he does very well. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Absolutely. That's great.
So actually, and this was interesting. I told my sons I was going to be interviewing you, and I said, you know, what do you guys want to know about Alex, about Vanover, and they both of them were very interested in the gear that you fly, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are interested in what you fly, and I'm also sure that it changes based on certain things, or maybe it doesn't. So, you know, what do you fly? And specifically, my one son, Cole, the oldest, he was curious what camera angle you fly at.
Okay.
But what do you fly? I mean, in general, like when you're flying.
So, all right. So I'll talk about I'll start with my freestyle setup because I've been doing that recently. I know it pretty well. And then I'll do my race setup and those specifics. So my freestyle setup, recently I switched to FPV Flight Club. I don't know if you were aware. I left X-Hover, been with them for 2 years. So that's a lot of my setups have been shifting slightly. But I'm running a new prototype freestyle frame from FPV Flight Club, which is going to be really awesome. It kind of is very similar to some of like the Aliens and the Astro X's, which is literally what I wanted, but just has a few tweaks to it to make building a lot easier, make it a little bit lighter as well. So there's that. I run the Hype Train motors on my quads. I actually am working on a Hype Train motor. It's the same motor I use on my freestyle quad as I do on my racing quad. It's a very, very fast motor, but it's not insanely fast. I can use it on my freestyle rig, no problem. Feels great. It's very, very smooth. It's not made by the same people who make the current Hype Train motors as well. That was one big thing that I went with. And this is something I've been actually working on for a year. So this has been a long process, but it's finally there. It is a 6S motor. There's airplanes going around everywhere. I run the Flight 1 stack, so that's the Bolt 32 or the Spark 32. Recently I've been also running the Hobbywing ESC, which has been great. They have a new one coming out too, which is awesome. All the Flight 1 firmware. And then Runcam's Micro Sparrow 2 camera, and that's the same camera I run in my racing quads as well as my freestyle quads. Pretty much everything between the two is the same. And then the TBS Crossfire, the TBS Unify, the Lumineer antennas. That's pretty much my freestyle set. My race set's similar. I'm actually running a new frame from FPV Flight Club as well. It's very similar to a frame called the Neutron and the Proton. It's kind of like, as you know, with FPV frames, everything's always evolving because stuff's changing. So it's just an evolution of that. It's really nice, though. It's minimalistic hardware. It's one screw to change out the arms. It's very, very protective of your electronics, dedicated place for the battery strap. It is very, very nice, and it makes going out to races and working on stuff much more relaxing, especially when I bring someone like a pit crew guy who's like working on my quads. It's like my pit crew guy saying, Bob's like, wow, this car is much easier to work on than your old one. I'm like, yeah, it's good to hear. But yeah, so I'm running the Vanover motor. That'll be coming out hopefully soon. We're filming this on April 19th. I'm getting a few more samples shipped out tomorrow. So I'm testing those, give my thumbs up on production, and then maybe June. I'm really, really excited about this motor. And we can talk more about it too if you want, but I'm really, really excited to release this.
Yeah, we can.
We'll talk more about it in a minute. But yeah, the Hype Train series motors, Flight 1 stacks, TBS gear, that's Crossfire, the Unify, Runcam cameras. And then my camera tilt this is a good question. It's about 40 degrees. I shift a little bit up sometimes to about 45, but I keep it pretty low. And I actually started doing this when I watched Minchin. I used to race about 50, 55 degrees back in DR1. And then at DR1, I'm watching Minchin on these wide open courses, and he's literally looking at the ground, like while he's flying, looking at the ground. It was funny. On some of the tracks, it was too low. He was actually having to do this with his quad so you can see where he's going. But he loved the lower camera tilt, and I asked him why. He's like, just so much more control in corners and in slaloms. You know, you're not forced to go fast. You can pick and choose your speeds a lot better. And I slowly, throughout the series, started lowering my tilt, and I just became natural. I like low tilt now. I think a lot of pilots kind of went from 70-degree tilts back to 50 or 45 as well. This is kind of a trend. I mean, everyone likes to see what the top pilots do and kind of try and copy stuff as well. But anyhow, that's my camera tilt. It's like my setup. My camera tilt can change per race. Typically with my setups, the only thing I change are not to say my motors. I won't actually swap motors on a quad. I just have like 2 setups. It's like a 6S setup and then like a high KV 5S setup. The 6S usually being, in this case, my new motor, it's faster, so I probably won't need the 5S anymore. But I usually use the 6S for the efficiency and like the endurance racing and for that, that long-lasting power. And then I like 4S and 5S for those like sprint races, right, where you just need to get to the finish, 3 laps, you're done, to keep the weight down and keep the RPMs usually higher. Another thing with 6S too is with most motors, I think they kind of suck and they're really, really hard on your gear on 6S. So again, that's partially why I'm changing with my motor. But yeah, it's my setup. It changes a little bit, but it's usually about the same. And all this stuff that I was talking about that isn't released yet will be coming out very, very soon. And maybe by the time this video airs, it'll be out. If not, social media, follow FPV Flight Club Riot, and you'll be the first to know about it when it happens. So
very cool. That actually brings me to an interesting question. There is the never-ending question of whether or not a quad should be heavy or light. Which one do you subscribe to?
Oh, light. I almost said heavy. Wow, light quads all the way. I don't necessarily think super light though. I tried last year, about last May or June. I probably had like the lightest race quads out of any top pilot in the nation. I was running my quads. All up weight was about 350, 365 grams on 4S. And oh man, I actually was just looking at one the other day. It's like these things are rockets. They are very fast, and they are actually surprisingly more efficient than some of the quads I'm flying now. And they don't have the same power as the quads I fly now. And at the time, that was really, really good. It was a good thrust to weight ratio. But I was running Lumineer 2350 kV motors, super light on like monoplate prototype frames, and just really, really lightweight stuff, 2306 motors as well. Those are only like 29, 30 grams. So, and then combined with a 4-cell 1300 milliamp battery, it was 360 to no more than 400 grams. And the quads were so snappy. What ended up happening though is when I started pushing higher kV setups like 5S on 2400 kV or 6S on 1800 kV, I noticed that these quads were extremely hard to control. Just very, very fast. And I think maybe the other problem too is the arms were like 4 millimeters thick to keep the weight down. And what ended up happening on a high kV setup is those arms would just flex ever so slightly. It would backfeed and cause your camera jello. And just you're losing efficiency with everything. So I think there's a certain weight to be said. I think I try and keep my builds with props before battery about 260 to 280 grams. My new ones are about 260. So it's pretty light.
Now, does that include your freestyle setups too?
No, my freestyle setups are a lot heavier. I think my current freestyle quad, actually, I've been trying to reduce the weight on my freestyle quad too. That's partially what the new frame is going to do. It's a lot lighter than any other frame of its type. It's probably the lightest of its style. But the all-up weight with a Hero 7 and everything is still probably like 620 grams, which is pretty good for a Hero 7, I think. But for freestyle, it's like another heavy topic. I actually probably prefer a little bit more weight because when I sling myself over trees or if I'm doing some backwards tricks, I want that momentum. And it takes a little bit more time to get that momentum sometimes. But when it's there, it just carries itself very well. So I don't know. It's like for freestyle, maybe I prefer a heavier quad, but for racing, definitely a lighter quad, but not like featherweight, just light.
Okay. So speaking of heavy quads.
Yeah.
You are going to be in the next season of DRL.
Yes.
And those quads which version is it now? Is it the DRL 3 or 4? I mean, like
it is it's the Racer 4.
Racer 4. Okay. So
Racer 4.
Those things are notorious for being bricks in the air and being super heavy.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you've raced on the open circuit for so long. You've been racing these featherweight drones for however long. What is and we got to see Bob Ruge almost kill himself with a Racer 3, or was it a Racer 2? I don't remember which one.
It was one of the two. I remember which.
Yeah. And so have you had a chance to play with that yet? And what do you think if you haven't, what do you think the differences are going to be?
So, okay. So I will say this I can't give away really anything about the Racer 4. And part of it is because, I'll be honest, none of the DRL pilots know much about the Racer 4 at this point, other than we know enough about him from what we've been told that it's basic. I was hoping it was going to be a way faster quad, yes, updated gear and everything. Because to be honest, in 2017 when the Racer 3 came out, it was a pretty fast quad for its time. Like, I remember flying my 5-inch quads on 2205 motors, and it was pretty similar in speed, just not as agile as a brick. This year's quad is basically the same thing, as I learned. It is they just changed it up a little bit. The prop size and the kV of the motor, they updated the powertrain on it, but it's still the same speed. In fact, it might even be a little bit slower. And a little bit heavier. It's different. But I will say this. I haven't gotten to practice with the Racer 4 yet, nor has any other DRL pilot, but I have been practicing with the Racer 3 in the meantime to try and, keep using it. It's basically the same quad, except the Racer 4 is more efficient, so it's less battery sag and everything. What I found, and a tiny backstory, is I've flown – most people don't know this about me. They just, assume featherweight quads and that's it. I won the X-Class, Pro Class race during DR1 this year, and keep in mind, these quads, we get one practice battery, and then we'd have the race. Like, the final race for the Pro Class in DR1, funny story, they gave us one practice battery. They said, don't wreck the quad, too, because we don't have backups. Like, if you wreck it, you're either not racing or you're going to patch it together and race. I decided to send it as hard as I could in the middle of Croatia on a rocky mountain. My warm-up lap, just sending it as hard as I could. I nicked a gate, but it caused the motor to desync, and I went 50 feet straight in a bunch of rocks. My X-Class was cracked in half, like a huge crack, and I'm like, crap. We put duct tape under it to brace it, so when it went like this, it would flex. I won that freaking race. I won it. I was pegged the entire time. My quad was – there's a reason probably the GoPro footage wasn't shown from that race because it was vibrating. So, mid-air, Luke Bannister was behind me. He's sitting next to me. He goes, Vanover, your arms are flexing. I'm like, I know. It's just going to snap mid-air. And it did it, and I won. My point is, I've flown X-Class and Pro Class before, won against world's top pilots, having never flown before. Recently, in New Year's, I was living in Korea for a small amount of time, and this is a really good testimony of my flying skills. We were flying the X-Fly quads, which X-Fly is a Chinese racing league which tries to mimic DRL in every way, shape, and form, which is fine. They're doing their own thing. But their quads were basically Racer 3s. I've flown both. They fly almost identical. I've even had other DRL pilots fly, and like, yeah, it's pretty damn close. And these X-Fly quads was interesting. We would go out and we practiced with these quads so much, Min Chan and I both. And I was beating Min Chan with these quads by like 3 seconds with these quads. Like, it was not close. In fact, in the final race in China, it wasn't a Vanover second or Min Chan first. It was me first, some random Chinese pilot second, Min Chan like third. And so my point is, I've flown different quads. I've flown different weights. The Racer 4, Racer 3, whatever it's going to be, it's the Racer 4. It's very, very different. And what I find is I do have to allocate most of my time flying on the sticks to that quad. But I think because I've been flying RC for so long, I can basically pick up a controller and a quad like nothing. At the recent team race, I don't know if you heard about it, Mayhem, it was a 12-hour race. In the final, my quads were literally falling out of the air mid-race. I was flying other people's quads because I ran out of gear on the team after the team race. This is for the individual race. And I flew one of Sean Taylor's quads for the first time. Now, keep in mind, this is Chase the Ace. Corey Ibanez, meanwhile, had already won the first one. So he just needed to basically finish this race and win because I'm flying someone else's controller, someone else's rates, someone else's camera tilt, way higher than my camera tilt to be actually, and everything. Everything's completely different. Everyone's literally going on like, even Scully's wrapping it up as this is the final race, like thanking everyone for coming. I get out there and I set the lap record. It was 2300 kV5S. I'm like, Sean, put a big battery on there. I need to go fast. I won that race. I remember getting up out of my seat and like yelling. This is an Alex Campbell quote. Shout out to him. I'm like, if you're scared, go to church. Just like walked up. And anyhow, And this was in front of every DRL pilot too, and they were all looking at me like there's no way, there's no way. It's completely it's like if you can make the most opposite setup, I fly lightweight quads. This quad was heavy. This quad was slower than what I fly. The rates were stupid compared to what I fly, and I won this race. And the only reason I lost this race the second time is because the quad literally died midair. Point made. Back to the topic. I'm used to flying other quads. I actually like flying. It excites me that the quads are slower. I think DRL pilots kind of think that's an advantage to them, but I think that they're going to quickly learn that's a disadvantage because like I was showing Min Chen at XFly, it's like I've watched motocross racing. I've watched I've done RC car racing. I've seen just drift racing. It's all about lines. Like it is all about lines. And for me, having a heavier quad, which is slower, doesn't really bother me. The only downside is you can't pull away from someone nearly as fast. But if you fly the line smooth and consistent, which is what I do really, really well, and this isn't to take away from like Min Chen or Evan, but like they just, as you see, they just pin it. And their lines are smooth, but they're not necessarily the best in some circumstances. So I'm excited for it. Give me a brick that it's like a 2-to-1 thrust to weight ratio compared to 15-to-1. I'll rip it all day long. I don't care if it sags really bad or has no power. It excites me. If it brings the racing closer, which brings the competition, which I love closer, sign me up. That's my thing. I love it. I love chasing someone or being right next to someone. It just makes me want to go faster.
So how do you think the format differences will play into what or will it even play into how you fly? Because there's the endurance races where you've got the same track where you just try to fly as long as you can, hit 6 laps, whatever. There's the speed races, just try to get 3 laps as fast as you can. This is 1 lap through the most ridiculous, we always DVR DRL and we watch it back like the next day because my kids are typically in bed when DRL comes on. Right. But do you think that the race format is going to affect how you fly?
That's a great question that I've been kind of wrestling with myself recently. Different format, and I've raced different formats before again, and I've had to learn them all. Sometimes I've had to learn them the hard way. With the DRL format, and I'm pretty sure it's the same this year as it was last year with the sudden death and the golden heat and all that, whatever. First off, I like the fact that there is like a sudden death and you can automatically qualify to the finals. I think that's going to be really good for me because as I've shown in races outside of DRL, DR1, whatever, doesn't matter, I'm really, really good at making the final. Like I'm really good about just making sure I don't push myself past what I need to, just get in that freaking final. So I think that's going to be great for me. And that's going to help me in the final as well. I think the tracks themselves, they are obstacle courses, to put it nicely. They are way different than what I fly. I love tight tracks. I love wide open tracks. I don't really have a preference anymore. Like I used to really love a technical track, right? But now I really don't care. Speed's nice, technicality is nice. I think the biggest thing is flying these tracks with a flying brick is going to be the biggest challenge for me to overcome. And I think part of this is a lesson I learned at Nationals when I kind of underestimated Evan, is I have to prepare myself for the worst. I think every top pilot or anyone who's competitive should prepare themselves for the worst case scenario and notice what their weak points are. Joshua Barbell pointed this out to me after Nationals. He goes, we were talking about DRL, the same exact conversation we're having. And he goes, do you ever think about your weak points when you're just sitting around or out practicing? I'm like, well, no, I'm usually just focusing on my strengths. He goes, well, what would your weak points be? And I had to think about it. I'm like, well, it's going to be flying a 1 kilo quad on a tight track and very, very tight racing in at 2 a.m. That's when they film and all this stuff. It's going to be an experience. The first race this year, I think, is going to be a learning experience for me. I'm hoping to go in and just do really well. That'd be exciting if I could just go in and it's like, oh, this is walk in the park like some people think it will be. But I'm prepared. I'm going in as a learning experience. First or last, doesn't matter. What's going to be deadly, and I think no one really recognizes this in me, is I persevere when I'm faced with challenges. If I go there and take dead last, I'm going to rewatch every single piece of flying. I'm going to watch these other guys at the event and be like, so what did they do better than what I did? I learned this at Nationals. At Nationals, I'm like, I had to go home it took me a few days to blow off the steam. I'm like, okay, what did Evan do better than me at Nationals? Let's not make the same mistakes again. And then at the Phoenix race, I beat Evan. Like I proved to myself at least that I can do it. I think it's the same thing with DRL. The format's going to be completely different, the quads and everything on that track. I think the course alone or the quad alone is one thing for me to handle. I think putting them together is going to be different. But again, I'm excited. I'm ready. We don't go to that first race until about a month from now or a month and a half from now, and I'm just looking forward to it because I'm ready to learn or just whoop up on everyone. It's going to be one of the two. But regardless, by the end of you on your show, I promise everyone else I talk to, I will have learned that format by the end of the season, that quad and everything, and I'll be on my A game like I am outside of DRL. And these guys know it. I think some of these guys maybe don't think it because there's other fast pilots who've gone onto that show before, like Sean Taylor, and haven't done super well. And I've been literally studying DRL seasons recently. I rewatched from 1 to 3, 1 through the last one. And I watch these guys, and I love studying these guys. I'm already learning. I can already tell you people like Jed and McStrolly where they're strong on some tracks and they're weak on other tracks. Same with Nerd. And I study these things. I think if you're going to be the best, you have to take that extra time. It's not like just show up and send it and win. I think we're getting to a point where it's going to take that extra footwork, and I'm excited. I'm ready to get out there, learn the format, first or last, doesn't matter. It's going to be great, and yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. It's different.
I like it. I will watch it with bated breath because I really want to see what happens because each session or each season as it goes on just seems to get better and better and better. So it's very exciting. Once again, this guy that is 19 carries himself in a much older fashion. Does he come off as a little bit cocky? Yeah, he does. He does. But does he have the right to come off as a little bit cocky? Absolutely. He has multiple national championships under his belt and from multiple countries, as a matter of fact. And he is truly a racing phenom. So next up, we tackle the very interesting question of, is open racing a young man's sport? And can an old man like myself get into racing? I'll let you guys watch that soon. Bye.